Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, you're joining us as we journey into the really captivating realm of Chinese mythology. We're zeroing in on Fuxi and Nuwa.
Right, these intertwined narratives.
Exactly. You're looking, I think, to grasp their significance, not just in China, but maybe in, the bigger picture of world myths and, well, what we can learn from them today.
Indeed. And we've got a good mix of sources, mythological accounts, naturally, but also a fascinating depth psychology take on it all.
Okay.
So our mission, if you will, is to unpack their origins, their roles, see where they fit in the grand scheme, and really pull out those lasting lessons, moral, psychological, the whole deal.
Okay, let's dive right in then. So Chinese cosmology, it often kicks off with Pangu.
The cosmic egg?
Yeah, picture this like swirling potential in an egg.
Yeah.
Pangu emerges and his big job, separating heaven and earth.
A huge tax.
Seriously huge. They say as he grew taller, the space between heaven and earth grew too, until bam, they were fixed apart.
And the transformation part is key.
Oh, absolutely. When he passes, his body becomes the world, eyes are the sun and moon, blood becomes rivers, his body the land. It's creation through, well, total self-sacrifice almost.
He sets a really interesting precedent, doesn't it? This idea of creation coming from one being at immense personal cost.
Definitely. So where do Fuxi and Nuwa come into this? Their origins seem, well, there are a few versions.
Yeah, that's pretty typical for ancient myths. Stories change over time across regions. Some tales say they were the first humans right there when Pangu was doing his thing.
Oh, right.
Others paint them as the only survivors of a massive flood, so they had to repopulate the earth.
Ah, the flood survivor motif. We see that elsewhere too.
We do. And then there's this really intriguing one. They're children of the goddess Huaxu. She got pregnant how? By stepping into the footprint of a thunder god.
Stepping into a thunder god's footprint. That's vivid.
Isn't it? And their relationship itself is central. Traditionally, they're siblings.
Siblings, but they
Yeah.
repopulate the earth.
Right. So facing this necessity, maybe after the flood, they needed divine approval to marry. It wasn't just assumed.
Okay, so how did they get that?
It leads to this really quite beautiful ritual. The story goes they each climbed a separate mountain
Okay.
and each lit a fire. They were looking for a sign.
What kind of sign?
The smoke. If the smoke from their two fires rose and intertwined in the sky, that was the nod from the heavens. Their union was blessed.
Wow, that's a powerful image. Separate yet destined to join. Intertwining smoke.
Exactly. A visual confirmation.
So the stage is set, they're approved. Let's talk about the creation of humanity itself.
Oh.
Nuwa really takes the lead here, doesn't she?
She absolutely does. The most common story gives her the main credit. She fashions humans from clay.
Clay, another classic element in creation stories.
Yes, but wait for the details. Fuxi is sometimes there, assisting, but it's primarily Nuwa's act. And there are a couple of variations that are really insightful. Okay, so one version says Nuwa spent 6 days creating animals first, like day 1, chickens, day 2, dogs, then boars, sheep, cows, horses, specific order.
Huh, a whole sequence.
And then on the 7th day, she made humans. It sets up this clear hierarchy, Creation culminates in humanity.
And does that connect to anything later?
It does. It's the basis for Human Day, Renri, still celebrated on the 7th day of the Chinese New Year. It highlights humanity's special place.
A cosmic birthday, kind of? Okay, what's the other version? You said it had layers? Social layers?
Right. This one gets into social structure.
Huh.
It suggests Nuwa first crafted humans really meticulously by hand, shaping each clay figure carefully.
Okay, the artisan approach.
These became the nobility, the elite, but, it was tiring work. So she figured out a quicker way.
It was.
Dipping a rope into the mud, then flicking it. The splatters of mud that landed, those became the common people.
Wow, okay, that's blunt.
Yeah.
A mythological explanation for social classes.
It is. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Was it just explaining difference or maybe even justifying the existing order? A really crucial question when looking at origin myths.
Definitely something to think about. How societies explain themselves.
Right. Now, while Nuwa's focus is this primal act of creating humans, Fuxi, his role is more about building on that, elevating human life.
Ah, okay. So Nuwa makes the people, Fuxi helps them thrive.
Exactly. He equips them. Think about basic survival, like food. Early humans were just hunting, right? Pretty hit or miss.
Unreliable.
Fuxi saw this, taught them to fish. First, just by hand, apparently. But then he gets clever. He invents nets.
Inspired by.
A spider's web, that intricate pattern. Genius, really.
That is clever. Nature providing the blueprint. You mentioned the Dragon King opposing this.
Yeah, there's a detail in some versions about the Dragon King not being happy about it, maybe representing, old ways resisting the new, or guarding resources.
Interesting conflict there. Did Fuxi have to fight him?
The myths often frame these innovations as overcoming obstacles, yeah. Highlighting human ingenuity against maybe natural forces or established powers.
Makes sense. What else did Fuxi introduce? Beyond fishing.
Animal domestication. A huge step, right?
Yeah.
Animal husbandry. A much more stable food source plus labor.
Okay. Fishing, farming. He's really setting up society.
He is. And it goes further. He's credited with foundational stuff for civilization. Currency for trade, a writing system.
Writing. That's massive.
And even formalizing marriage customs. Bringing structure to social life. He's truly painted as the architect of civilization.
So Nuwa creates life. Fuxi builds the society around it. A real partnership.
A divine division of labor, you could say. But the story doesn't just end with, and they all lived happily ever after. Disaster strikes.
Oh, wow. And Nuwa steps up again.
She does, in a majorly heroic way. So there's this massive fight between the water god, Gong, and the fire god, Zurong.
Elemental battle. Classics.
Gong loses. And in a rage, he smashes his head against Buziu Mountain, which is one of the pillars holding up the sky.
Well, that's not good.
Not good at all. The consequences are catastrophic. The sky rips open, floods, fires everywhere, monsters unleashed. Humanity's facing annihilation again.
Just chaos.
Total chaos. And it's Nuwa who confronts it. The things she does are just epic.
Like what? How do you fix a broken sky?
She gathers 5 colored stones, melts them down, and uses this mixture to patch the hole in the sky.
5 colored stones. Symbolism there.
Probably. Maybe the 5 elements, or just the diversity of the cosmos. Then the broken pillar. She needs to replace that.
What does she use?
The legs of a giant sky turtle. Ao, the cosmic turtle, uses its legs as new pillars.
Wow. Cosmic engineering on a grand scale.
Right. And she doesn't stop there. The monster's running rampant. She slays a powerful dragon to restore order, scare the others off.
Taking charge.
And the flood's still raging. She burns reeds and uses the ash to soak up the water, stop the flooding.
Incredible. Just fixing everything.
It's an immense display of dedication. And some versions, they take it even further. Some say she died from exhaustion after all this. Or even that she used her own body to fill the last gap in the sky.
Whoa. Becoming part of the repair herself.
A profound level of sacrifice for humanity. It really says something about the values in these myths, doesn't it? These aren't distant gods.
No, they're deeply invested, even to the point of self-sacrifice. So their legacy, how are they remembered visually?
Often depicted together, human upper bodies, but their lower halves are intertwined snake or dragon tails.
The snake tails. What's the thinking there?
Lots of symbolism, duality, connection, transformation. It visually hammers home that they're a pair, the foundation, like 2 sides of a coin.
And they sometimes hold tools.
Right, a compass and a square or ruler. Reinforces that idea of them being architects, of society, of order itself.
Makes sense. And their worship wasn't just limited to one group.
No, it spread beyond the Han Chinese. Ethnic minorities like the Miao people also venerate them. Shows how fundamental they were seen to be.
And even today.
Absolutely. Fuxi's tomb in Henan is a major site. Temples exist. And they pop up in modern culture too. Books, video games. They still resonate.
Okay, so we've covered the myths. Let's shift gears a bit. You mentioned a depth psychology perspective. Jungian.
Yes, from a Jungian angle, this myth is incredibly rich. Fuxi and Nuwa as a pair. That's the divine syzygy.
Syzygy? Sacred pairing.
Exactly, the sacred partnership of masculine and feminine energies. Those intertwined tails, a symbol of integrating opposites, key to Jung's idea of wholeness.
Okay.
And that ritual with the smoke, it's like the connunctio in alchemy, the chemical wedding, joining different elements to create something new. Union of complementary forces.
That idea of paired opposites feels really fundamental. What about Nuwa creating humans from clay, psychologically?
Think of clay as raw, unconscious potential, Nuwa shaping it. That's bringing consciousness, bringing form, out of the undifferentiated unconscious. It's a conscious, deliberate act.
Unlike some myths where it's more spontaneous.
Right. And the 7-day structure, that can mirror how consciousness emerges in an ordered way within the psyche.
And the 2 creation methods, nobles versus commoners. How does that fit psychologically?
It could represent different levels of individuation. That's the lifelong journey to becoming a whole self. The handcrafted nobles, maybe symbolizing more developed self-awareness.
And the rope-flung commoners.
Perhaps the collective consciousness or psyches that are less differentiated, less individualized. It's an interpretation, of course.
Fascinating way to look at it. Okay, so Fuxi's gifts, fishing, writing, etc., how do they map onto this?
They can be seen as the development of the ego, our conscious sense of self and how it adapts. Fishing, drawing nourishment from the unconscious depths, the water.
Okay, I see that.
Animal domestication, taming and integrating our instinctual energies, the animals. And writing using symbols, that's developing symbolic thought, preserving consciousness.
Building the structures of the conscious mind.
Pretty much.
And the catastrophe, the broken pillar, the chaos, Nuwa's repair.
Psychologically, that looks like psychic dissolution. When the conscious mind gets overwhelmed by unconscious stuff, chaos.
Like a breakdown.
Could be seen that way. And Nuwa's repair work, that symbolizes integrating those fragmented parts, reestablishing healthy boundaries between conscious and unconscious, healing, wholeness.
It's amazing how these ancient stories seem to map onto inner experience. Okay, let's zoom out again. How do Fuxi and Nuwa compare to other world creation myths?
Well, you see similar themes pop up. The primordial pair, like Uranus and Gaia in Greece, or Buri and Besla in Norse myth.
Right.
But Fuxi and Nuwa are more active crafters, less just progenitors. They consciously design and build.
That active crafting seems key. And the clay creation.
Common motif: Mesopotamia, the Bible, Adam, Egypt. But often there's a separate step, like a divine breath needed to animate the clay. Nuwa's act feels more complete in itself, like the form is the life.
Interesting nuance. What about the catastrophe part? Floods, destruction.
Very widespread theme. Noah's Ark, for example. But Nuwa's story is more about repair and restoration of the existing world, not wiping the slate clean. Maybe points to a more cyclical view. Resilience.
Mending, not replacing. Got it. And divine sacrifice. Nuwa potentially giving herself up.
We see creator sacrifices elsewhere, like Purusha in Vedic myth or Ymir in Norse myth, where their bodies become the cosmos at the start. Nuwa's sacrifice, if it happens, is to preserve creation, more like a redemptive act later on.
A different kind of sacrifice.
Yeah.
You mentioned cultural specifics earlier. How do these myths reflect Chinese values?
A big one is the immanence of the creators. Fuxi and Nuwa stick around, involved. They act like ancestors, not distant gods off in some heaven.
Right, not transcendent in the same way.
Exactly. That reflects the strong Chinese emphasis on family, ancestors, filial piety, and the way creation and civilization building are intertwined in their story. That points to the philosophical focus on culture, social harmony, relationships as essential for being fully human.
It all ties together: creation, culture, family. Okay, finally, let's bring in yin and yang and the deeper archetypal stuff.
Absolutely central. Fuxi and Nuwa perfectly embody yin, feminine, and yang, masculine. Their union isn't just marriage, it's the balance of these primal forces that create and sustain everything.
The fundamental duality.
In Jungian terms, it's the integration of anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine crucial for psychological wholeness.
And Fuxi is linked to the I Ching, the trigrams.
Yes. His gift of the I Ching trigrams, these patterns of change, aligns beautifully with Jung's archetypes, universal patterns in the unconscious. The I Ching becomes a tool, really, for understanding those patterns, tapping into the unconscious.
A way to read the deep structures.
Yeah.
And Nuwa with the clay, the great mother archetype.
Precisely. Clay is primal potential, the formless unconscious. Nuwa shaving it. She's the great mother source of creation, fertility, the unconscious processes giving birth to consciousness. It mirrors individuation, the psyche taking shape.
And this balance between male and female creators, that feels somewhat distinct compared to some other traditions.
It does. While other myths obviously have goddesses, the Fuxi Nuwa story puts the partnership and interdependence right at the center of creation and cosmic maintenance. It really highlights balance.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the main takeaways, the core lessons from Fuxi and Nuwa?
I think they stand as these incredible foundational figures. They embody creation, yes, but also innovation, resilience against disaster, and crucially, this idea of balance and interconnection. Yin and yang.
And responsibility, ingenuity.
Definitely. Their stories emphasize human responsibility, the power of cleverness and hard work, and the strength that comes from unity, from complementary forces working together. Psychologically, it's about integrating ourselves.
And their impact clearly lasts. Ancient worship, modern pop culture.
It shows how powerful these foundational narratives are. They offer timeless insights about where we come from, what we can achieve, and our place in the grand scheme of things.
So, a final thought for our listeners, reflecting on Fuxi and Nuwa. Consider the emphasis here. Balance, active shaping of the world, resilience, creators who stay involved. How might that perspective shape how we think about creation, our own responsibilities, our connection to the world?
Right. What does it really mean that these foundational figures didn't just create and leave, but remain part of it all? What does that imply for us, living in and shaping the world now?
A lot to chew on. We hope this deep dive gave you some interesting new perspectives. Thanks for exploring this with us.